Hi everyone, Anthony Morganti here. Those of you that watch my videos know that I'm a big fan of Topaz Denoise AI. I think it works great with any type of image, but one genre of photography it works particularly well with is wildlife photography. Often when we shoot wildlife, we're using higher ISOs and we're introducing a lot of noise into our images. And when we use an application like Lightroom, it will get rid of the noise, but it obliterates detail and it really makes the image unusable. That's where Denoise AI comes in. It really could remove the noise and not hurt detail at all. For example, I have this image of this baby ocelot. Now, this technically isn't a wildlife image. I took it at the Buffalo Zoo. As you can see, I had to use a high ISO of 12,800, and if I zoom in, you can see that there is a lot of noise. Now in Lightroom, what I would typically do when I'm processing an image, I would adjust tone first. So I went to the basic tab and I did that here. And when I say tone, it's mainly these 6 sliders, but I avoid moving contrast because contrast would enhance the noise. And if you want to remove the noise, you should do that early in your workflow before you add contrast, before you add texture, clarity, or any sharpness. So what I'll do is I'll do like mainly exposure if needed. Didn't need to on this image. Highlight shadows, whites and blacks. No texture, no clarity, no dehaze. Maybe add a little vibrance if it needs it, or saturation. In this case, I added a bit of vibrance. And then I'm ready to remove the noise. I'll go to the Detail tab, and you can see by default, Lightroom puts sharpening at 40. I'll take that down to 0 because, again, when you're adding sharpening to an image, you're also sharpening the noise. It's a little more difficult to get rid of. Then what I'll do is I'll zoom into a noisy part, like up in here, and I'll go to the luminance noise reduction slider and move that to the right. And I'll just keep moving it to the right until the noise is gone, and it's pretty much gone around 80. Pretty much. But let me go back to the ocelot's face now. Look it's so smoothed out. We lost all kinds of detail. It really looks like a painting now. So Lightroom just doesn't cut it. So what I do is I'd send this to Denoise AI, and my sequence of events are pretty much the same in that I will take the raw file, go to the basic tab, and I'll adjust tone. I'll avoid adjusting contrast though. I will not add any texture, clarity, or dehaze. I may add a bit of vibrance or saturation if needed. Then I'll go to detail. If there's any default sharpening added, I'll take that down to 0 because, again, it will make Denoise's job easier because it will find it, if you're sharpening noise, it's more difficult to remove. I'll take noise reduction, luminance slider to 0. Now, color noise reduction by default for my camera, it put it at 25. It may do that for you as well. What I found is that Lightroom's color noise reduction works great. It works as well as Denoise AI. So I'll just leave that at 25. I won't worry about that. So now I'll send this image into Denoise AI. I'll right click right on it, go down to Edit In, and then over and down to Denoise AI. Now, Denoise AI works as a standalone application, and when you use it as a standalone application, it will work on raw files. Unfortunately, when you use it as a plugin, Lightroom or Photoshop, it will not work directly on a raw file. That is not a limitation of Denoise AI. Lightroom will not allow you to send a raw file into any plugin. You have to send a different file type, TIFF, PSD, or JPEG. Topaz Labs recommends for Denoise AI that you use TIFF. So I'm going to edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. It will be a TIFF file with the default specs, and I'll click Edit. You can see in the top left-hand corner there's a progress bar. Lightroom is creating that TIFF file with those specs, and it will open it up directly into Denoise AI. Now there's different views in Denoise AI, and there's different AI models. An AI model is the way Denoise AI goes about removing the noise, and it has 5 different AI models. What I like to do is use a view where I can compare those AI models to one another to try to determine which is best. And there is a view called Comparison View. Click right here, and it will split the screen up into 4 different views. So we're looking at 4 of the 5 AI models at once. What I'll do next is I'll go to this navigator rectangle, and I'll just move it over something critical in the image like the baby ocelot's face. You have to wait for each of them to render. You can see in the lower left-hand corner it says updating. And as I have it laid out, yours may vary. The top left-hand corner I have the standard AI model. You can see it's active because the blue square in the blue rectangle, the left-hand corner. To the right of that is the clear model. In the lower left is the low light model, and in the lower right is the severe noise model. Now there is a fifth model. It's called the raw model, and it's actually meant to be used on raw files. Now you could use it on this TIFF file if you'd like. What you would probably want to do is find which one of these four models may look worse. In this case, let's just say it's low light. Just make sure it's active. You have that blue rectangle in the lower left-hand corner. Then click on raw, and it will swap out low light with raw. So you can see now the raw is over there. If you want to go back to the low light, just make sure that's active and click on low light. Now, there's something else important. When we're comparing them, we want to compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges. There's different settings for each of these. If I click on the standard model, you can see there's a severe noise slider and an enhanced sharpness slider. They're moved somewhere. If I go to clear, there are totally different adjustments there. If I go to low light, there's remove noise and enhanced sharpness and different settings, and severe noise, similar different settings. But you'll notice above that there's a toggle switch. This is auto. If I put severe noise on auto, what it will do is it'll automatically adjust the remove noise and enhance sharpness that it feels is fitting for this image. So what I want to do is I want to go through all four of the different models I'm viewing and make sure this switch is on, because I want them all on auto, so I'm comparing apples to apples, oranges to oranges. Now, their standard is on auto, clear is on auto, low light is on auto, severe noise is on auto. In just eyeballing them as is, it looks like clear might be the sharpest, but severe noise definitely remove more noise. So what I'll do then is I'll click on one that I think looks best. I'm going to say severe noise. It did remove most of the noise on auto. Then I'll put that in single view mode. You click right here. Make sure it's active though. Make sure you have that blue rectangle in the lower left hand corner. When you put it on single view, you'll see that image all by itself. Then you could look around, make sure it removed all the noise. You could zoom in. You could go to this right here and you could zoom in like further. Let it render. Make sure it removed the noise. Maybe just a tiny bit of noise up in here above this ear. So then you could come in and you could then adjust these sliders. Even though I'm on auto now, I might want to just remove a little more noise. See what it looks like. Looks pretty good. Want to try to bring back some of that sharpness? Go to this enhanced sharpness slider, move it to the right. But be careful, you may reintroduce the noise. So you may not want to do that. Again, you could just put it back on auto and then go to remove noise. I tweak that to the right a little bit. And then you have some post-processing sliders. You have a recover original detail slider. If you want to try to enhance the noise again, you could do this. Now again, this could reintroduce. If you want to try to enhance the sharpness, you can move this to the right, but you may bring back some of the noise. So you got to be careful with that. Usually I like that around 20. It seems to work well with most images, but I seem to be reintroducing some noise in this problem area over here. So I'll just leave that down. You also have the color noise reduction. I already did that in Lightroom, so I don't need to do it here. So I'll just double check. It looks like that there's a lot of noise in the ocelot's ears, so I just want to double check the ears look pretty good. And the eyes look pretty good. And I like it. I think it works good. I'll click apply. Now once it returns to Lightroom with that image, I'll finish my Lightroom processing. I already did tone, most of tone, right? I didn't add any contrast. But what I'll do is I'll go to the basic tab. If I need to, or I want to add some texture, maybe a little clarity. You zoom in. Looks pretty good. Let me tweak those down just a little bit. Looks pretty sharp too. I'll go to the detail tab though. I could add a little more sharpening. That looks pretty good. Then I'll finish it off. I'll go to effects, add a little bit of a darker vignette. All right. There is our finished image. Let's go to the original raw file. This is just had tone done to it, some vibrance added to it, and we had the detail tab. I took sharpening all the way down because that was defaulted at 40. By default, I had noise reduction at 0, so that didn't matter. So we'll zoom in here. And you can see that noise. I think you could see it pretty good in the ocelot's face, in this ear. And we'll go over to our image that we sent to Denoise AI, and there is the noise reduced image. And I did some sharpening in Lightroom. Now there is, of course, Topaz Labs Sharpen AI. I could send the image to Sharpen AI instead of sharpening the image in Lightroom. That, of course, would work great. What I found, though, is Sharpen AI works particularly well on images where I misfocus. So if it's blurry because I misfocus, I would definitely not even try to sharpen this image in Lightroom. I would send it into Sharpen AI because it most often would fix that. The other thing is if there was some either camera movement or subject movement because I used too slow of a shutter speed, Sharpen AI works great on fixing that as well, whereas Lightroom won't fix that at all. So in those cases, I would definitely use Sharpen AI. But if I just have to do like standard sharpening, like on this image, I would probably just do that in Lightroom. It might be a bit over sharpened. What I often do, and I often tell my students when they process their images, your brain kind of gets tired, your eyes get fatigued when you're doing processing, and what you'll find is you'll often over sharpen an image and you'll add too much vibrance or saturation, and you won't really realize you're doing it. So what you should do is when you feel like you're done processing, step away from your computer for 15 minutes or so. Let your eyes focus on other things, let your brain kind of reset, then come back and look at the image, and then it will really stick out what you did wrong. Meaning if you over sharpened it, you'll know it. If you added too much vibrance or saturation, you'll know it. And just glancing at this, I think it's a little bit over sharpened, but I could fix that later. Hopefully you get the idea why I think Denoise AI is a great application and why I think it's really a must-have app for anyone that shoots wildlife. Thank you, everyone who watches my videos. I really do appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon.